unachievable. Good morning. We're learning as we're really on the bottom of Tzadi Hey Amid Beis, top of Tzadi Vav and Aleph. That the Gemara we just brought from a Brisa English. We said in Toshan Satan Ba'alya Vim Tosh Kalapas Kula Surachi Yasik Satan. We said that if you used meat fat to smear the surface of your oven, you can't use it to make bread until you run the tanner through a cycle that burns out the meat, because you're not allowed to make meat bread. But we see from here that you can, by burning out, get rid of whatever meat was absorbed. So you see there is such a thing. So now the Gemara asks on the top of Tzadi Vav Amud Aleph, Amai Yishbaru. In our Mishnah, we said that earlier in the parak, we said that if you have a pot that was used in the Beis Hamikdash that was made out of cheres, that absorbed the tam of the meat that was cooked in it, then you have to break it. There's no way you're not going to be able to do mriko shtifa. You're going to have to break it because there's no way to get out the tam of the kachim in it, and it's going to become nicer. So the only eitzah to get rid of it is to break it. So the Gemara is asking, why is that true? Why is it that you have to break it? We just said that an oven, we said it, and the Gemara said before, it's talking about a tanu shel cheres. We said it's zehaseka befnim, zehaseka b'chutz. We said although we find that by a pot you can't clean out a pot, but the tanner you can clean out the inside of a tanner by burning it out. So why can't you do the same thing? Why can't you take these kederis and put them inside the oven and burn them out from both the inside and the outside? He said the you're not allowed to put ovens. We don't want to make Yerushalayim into an industrial city with smoke coming out and making all the nice white Jerusalem stone sooty. So we don't allow ovens. We don't allow industrial ovens. What?
It's a zoning regulation.
Right, exactly. A commercial. Right. It's not zoned for commercial. Zak the Gemara. That's why you don't have the option of making a tanur or a thing, one of these tanurim that are used to put kalim in it. You don't have that in the Beis Hamikdash. It doesn't have to be in the Beis Hamikdash.
You can take it out of town.
No, but we're talking about in the Beis Hamikdash. Right? It has dam.
Take it out.
It has the problem is that it has kachim inside of it.
You can take it out.
Yeah. Amrabaya v'chi oisin ashpasos ba'azara. Saying the whole problem is you can't put an oven in the Beis Hamikdash. So what are you doing instead? You're going to take these clay kalim made out of earthenware, and you're going to smash them. But then you're going to have cracked pottery all over the place. You're not allowed to make a garbage dump in the Azara. So the Marish Tamitza Hadutani, he forgot that which we learned. That which Shmaya b'Kalnavai. This is what Shmaya said when he was in Kalnavai. Shivir klicheretz nivloim b'mkoimen. There was a nace in the Beis Hamikdash that the broken pieces of these klicheres that they had to break because it had kachim in it would get absorbed by the earth through a nace. So your issue that you're saying that Mamanav Shach, you're going to have something wrong. Either you're going to have to have an oven to clean them out, or you're going to have a garbage dump. There's no garbage dump. When you put the klicharis, it got absorbed into the ground.
But the ground was made out of stones.
I guess
stones.
I guess the Ritzvah had a hole in it for disposal, place that they didn't walk. Yeah. Right, they also had water that would go through their places, right? They had places for the yayin and the nesachim. They would do different things they would pour out. It would also go through. I guess that was through the mizbeach. That underneath the mizbeach was certainly Adama. I guess there were holes in the ritzpah. Tano, maybe it was absorbed into the stone. I don't know. Maybe that was the nace. They said the tanner that they used in the mikdash, this wasn't the tanner for burning kalim. This was the tanner they used to cook the kachim in it, right? Because they were allowed to make it however they wanted. They weren't eating the meat raw. They were cooking it. It was made out of metal because they didn't want it to get absorbed nicer and then have to be burned. So they made it out of metal that they could burn it out. So never the cheres. What's the problem with making it a earthenware oven? Since, like we said, as long as it's burning on the inside, it's not on the outside of it. You can the tanner is able to burn out whatever's inside of it. So why couldn't the tanner be made out of cheres? It's going to burn it. You could burn it out and clean it out that way. So since there's a whole different reason why it had to be a kli matras. It's because nothing to do with absorbed flavors. Since there is the shtei lechem, which was the lechem that they would make for on Shavuos, and the lechem aponim for every Shabbos. They would bake that in this oven. There was no, when you make a lechem aponim and shtei lechem, you're not putting it into a klisharis. You're not, the way you makadosh it is by baking it. So havale klisharis. That made the tanner into a klisharis. It was the medium that made these lechem to become kaddish. So it had the din of a klisharis. Just like when you make a mincha, you put the silas of the mincha into a klisharis, and that makes it kaddish. For the bread, what made it kaddish was being put into the oven. Klisharis techaris le'avdinan, and we don't make a klisharis out of earthenware. All the klisharis in the mikdash were made, as we're going to see, either of metal or of, even according to one man number, it could be different. I feel Rabbi Yosef Yehuda like Amar El the eights of the cheres light. Even Rabbi Yosef Yehuda was a little more lax as far as what the klisharis could be made out of. He said it could be made out. It doesn't have to be bedafka metal. It could even be eights. But he said only eights, but even he agrees you can't make it out of earthenware. This is an interesting story. It seems, Yisrael Yehuda learned by Rami Bar Chama. Shav gave a Azal of Sheshes, and he abandoned Rami Bar Chama for reasons which will soon be explained, and he left to go to Rav Sheshes, to learn by Rav Sheshes. Yumuchad Pagabe. One day his old Rebbe met him. Amalei, Alka Petor Nakton, Recha Asil Liad. When you went to join this fancy person, he said you went to go to Rav Sheshes. He's very prominent. Did it come to you? Did that reyach, that odor, that aroma of Rav Sheshes also come to you? Meaning you went because you thought he was fancier than me. Did it really make you any better a person? Which he explained. Did you become as prominent as Rav Sheshes by abandoning me and going to him? Amle la mishum hachi. That's not the reason why I went to Rav Sheshes. There's a different reason. Sounds like they're both being quite mean to each other. Mar kibiina milsa. When I would ask you a question, pashatli misvara, you'd give me a svara of why you're right. Kimishkachan masnisa parchala. Then if we would find a Tana that disagreed with your svara, you were slugged up. Rav Sheshes kibiina milsa mine pashatli masnisa. When I ask Rav Sheshes the question, he brings me an answer from a Mishnah. The chinam mishkachan masnisa parcha masnisa masnisa. Doesn't make a difference if there's a Mishnah that's fakert from what he said, because he supported whatever he said from a Mishnah. Whereas you just said from your own head, then there's a Mishnah that's fakert that you have to give in. He said, if you're being honest, if you're going to be so honest with me about your kindness that I left you, you think I was doing it for covet, I'll tell you why. It's not because of covet, it's because I didn't find your analysis to be convincing. Right? It's Amalei. So he said, he challenged him. Yitzchak Bar Yehuda challenged Ram Bar Chama challenged Rav Yitzchak Bar Yehuda. He asked him, okay, listen, so you're saying you left me because I don't know how to answer your questions without that I could still get slugged up by a Mishnah. Bo'amine Milsa, ask me a question, and I'll answer you, and it'll be like the Mishnah. So you won't, I'll prove to you that I know how to answer, that there's no Mishnah fakir for me. Bo'amine, so he asked from him, Bishul b'mixas kli, ton mariko shtifoy ein ton. He asked him, if they would cook on a kli in the Beis Hamikdash, and you just placed like a little piece of meat, you used the bottom of the pot as a griddle, and you fried it, and you just used about one corner of the kli to do it. Does the whole kli need to be rinsed and burnt out or boiled out, or is it just that portion? Do you need the whole rest of the kli, the parts that weren't touched by the meat? Does it need the mariko shtifa? It doesn't need. Just like by hazah, which we said in the Mishnah, legabi dam chatas that got on a beged, we said it's only the makam, only the place where the dam got. That's all you have to clean. You don't have to do the rest of the beged. So this should be the same way. He said, but there's no Mishnah supporting this. Amalei mistaver keneged kebeged. It's mistaver like a beged. Ma beged and eton kibus al makam adam. I've cleaned it on mariko shtifa ala b'makam bishul. He says, it's the same thing. Why should this be any different? Amalei mi dami. He said to him, how could you compare them? Dam loy mifafeya. Dam, we're talking about regular dam that came out of a kli. It goes on a beged. It only goes where it goes, and that's the end of it. Bishul mifafeya, but bishul, the tam spreads out. It's not just the place that you cooked. It's also a little bit spritzes here and there. The tam goes on more of the kli than where it was standing. So first of all, your svara of being medam them is not so good. V'oitanya, we also have a brisa. Chomer b'hazah mi mariko. There's a chumrah of the dam that got on a beged, which was the first part of this parak. Mariko shtifa, from this din of mariko shtifa, when you cook the basar of a carbon, that the din is that the kli that you cooked it in needs to be boiled out and then rinsed. And there's also vice versa, chaymer of the din of the basar that was cooked over the hazah of the dam that went on a beged. Chaymer b'hazah, the chaymer hazah. The hazah is going to not just be by chatois hachitzonis, even by chatas hapnimius, where there's no basar on it, right? The chatas pnimius, everything gets burnt. And as we're going to see, the whole din of mariko shtifa is only on something that is eaten, but it wouldn't apply to the chatois hapnimius. And it also applies to the dam before you do zrika. Masha Enkein, the din of shtifa marika is only on something that's eaten, like when you take basar and you cook it. But dam before zrika would not have the din of shtika marika. Masha Enkein mariko shtifa, chay mariko shtifa, sham mariko shtifa nehages bein b'kotche kotch and bein b'kotche kala. That the din of hazah on a beged is only on chatas, but mariko shtifa would be even on kotche, not just by chatas, but by kachim and by kachim kalim. So, also another chumrah is bishul b'miksa kli ton mariko shtifa kolakli masha enkem ba'azah. Another chumrah is that when you cook on a kli, you cook the basar on a kli, you have to do mariko shtifa on the entire kli, while hazah is only on the place where it hit. So you see, this is a brisa connected what Rabbi Bar Chama had tried to say, that by Mariko Shtifa, it's the same as a beged, that it's only on the place where it touched. Amalei Tanya. So Rami Rachamo had to eat his words, right? He had challenged his student. Well, I said Rami Rachamo was being a little, it's like we're talking about the Amoraim, but it sounds like he was being a little challenging to his Talmud. He says, "You left me for covet." And his Talmud said, "No, I left you because the learning was better." And then he tried to challenge the Talmud, and in the end, the Talmud was proven right. That his whole taina on Rabbi Rachama was that when you say something misvara, and then it turns out there's a brisa, there's a Mishnah connected you, and that's exactly what happened over here. It turned out there was a brisa. The time of why is it taka the case that by Mariku Shtifa you have to do the entire kli? Amakrabim klina chayshes bushala. Bikli b'chayshes, even if any part of a klina chayshes is cooked, the whole thing needs Mariku Shtifa. I feel what mixes kli, even if it's only in part of a kli. So we're at the first wide line on Sadi Vavam and base by the two dots. So we had said in the Mishnah, Echad koche kochim, ve'echad kochim kalim tu'unim mariku shtifa. This din of mariku shtifa, that when you cook basar in a kli in the basar kochim in the Beis Hamikdash, it has the special din of mariku shtifa, that applies to both koche kochim and kochim kalim. If Shimon Aimer kochim kalim ain't tu'unim mariku shtifa. If Shimon disagrees, he says no, it only applies to koche kochim, not to koche kalim. Tanur Rabban. Chatas ainli el chatas kol kachim ainli el chatas kol echad kachim kachim. Tan Rabban. Chatas ainli el chatas kol kachim minayim. How do we know other kachim as well? Tamalaymer kodesh kadoshim he. The Torah says by the din of Mariku Shtifa kol zach b'kan v'yeichel oiser kodesh kadoshim he. About the basar, there's kodesh kadoshim. This is right after it says that you need Mariku Shtifa. So Yachal Shani Marbes Hatshuma. So that says Kodesh Kadoshim. It means so he's on this Mandamer. Rabbi Yehuda is going to be the Tanakam of our Mishnah. Holds it includes not just Kodesh Kadoshim, but anything. Yachal Shani Marbes Hatshuma. Maybe it's not just Kodesh Kachim and Kachim Kalim. Maybe even Truma also has the din of Mariko Shtifa. Tamalayma Oisa Pratla Truma. That excludes Truma. Divi Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Aimer, Kachim Kadoshim to Unimariku Shtifa, Kachim Kalmein to Unimariku Shtifa. He says, he learns a pasuk differently. T'chsev Kodesh Kadoshim in Kachim Kalim Loi. Rabbi Shimon seems to have the better of the argument, right? The Torah says Kodesh Kadoshim. He says that means Kachim and not Kachim Kalim. Rabbi Yehuda sort of just ignored that. He said, when it says Kachim, Kodesh Kadoshim, it means anything that's Kodesh, but Oisa excludes Truma. But includes Kachim Kalim. So the Gemara, my time of Yehuda. So what's the reason of Yehuda? Al-Chayr Shimon is right. It says Kodesh Kadoshim. It should only mean Kodesh Kachim. So the Gemara, Eitzach Oisa Lamutei Truma, for the fact that the Torah says Oisa to exclude Truma, Mechlal the Kachim Kalim to Unimariku Shtifa. If Kachim Kadoshim only meant Kachim, why would you need a pasuk to exclude Truma? Everything is excluded other than Kachim Kachim. So in the fact that we need a pasuk to exclude Truma, I say that the Kodesh Kadoshim just means any Kachim, but not all Kachim. Truma is a kind of Kachim, but it's not included. But Rav Shimon would tell him, no, you would be in theory you'd be right, but I use Isa to tell you a whole different thing. Like we said earlier in the parak, it's telling you then it became possible that it's not going to, that it's also going to be excluded from the din Mariko Shtifa. So it's for a whole different limud. Is it true? You're saying Truma was excluded from the din of Shtifa Batanya. Kedera should be basar, a kedera that you cooked in it meat, you can't cook milk in it. And if you did cook, if it's in the benois and tam, if it's enough in the basar pot, you put in enough chalav to give a tam, meaning more than 1/60th, it's gonna be aser. Truma leivasha b'chulin. Truma, you can't cook chulin in it, or else the chulin is going to get the din of truma. and then it's not going to be able to eat. It's only going to be able to eat by kahanim. And if he does, if there's enough truma to be nice and tam, it's going to make all the chulin have a din truma. So you see that if it's nice and tam, so you do need to do mariko shtifa. It does have a din that it gets absorbed, and you have to remove it by boiling it out. Amar Abaya, no, it doesn't mean that it gets fully the din of mariko shtifa. When we say that truma is excluded, doesn't mean that it's excluded from the din that when it gets a tam of truma in chulin, that it's going to passel, and it's going to need mariko shtifa to take it out. It means it doesn't need the extra din that we said before, that you need to clean out the entire kli, not just the place that it touched, by mariko shtifa. The din of mariko shtifa is only with water and not with wine, and it says b'mayim, and not even with diluted wine. It has to be pure water. Ha afilu b'yayin, afilu b'mazig. But truma, you could wash it out with yayin or mazik. It doesn't have the full din of mariko shtifa because of Isa. That we're going to have the machlekes on the next amud about exactly how what is the mariko shtifa referring to? That mariko shtifa, we're going to say one man amud Rabbi is going to say it's with cold water. But this is even with hot. Well, you could just. We're going to see there's a mandama who says mariko shtifa is rinsing with cold water. It doesn't mean that you don't also need to do the hagala. You also have to do first the hagala in hot water to get rid of the taste. But then afterwards, the Torah was geyser that you have to do additionally a rinsing with cold water.
So mariko and goyla is the same thing.
So according to that mandama, one is on the inside and one is on the outside. The other mandama will say one is hot and one is cold. That's what we've been saying till now, right? Mariko shtifa, one was you do it first with hot, then with cold. This mandama says they're both cold, then it means mariko shtifa, one is on the inside and one is on the outside. We'll see shortly. So mariko shtifa b'tzayin ha'afilu b'chamin. So mariko shtifa b'tzayin, mariko b'chamin or shtifa b'tzayin ma'ikal ameima. So Gemara, shtifa yiserta. Even if you say marika is b'chamin and shtifa is b'tzayin, and so you need a b'chamin anyway. So what is the extra din that was saying that you don't need, that truma is excluded from it anyway needs the chamin? It says that you don't need the extra cold rinsing that you need for mariko shtifa. That mariko shtifa would require. If you cooked meat of a kachim, whichever one it was, let's say chatas or a kachim holidays, if you did it at the beginning of Yom Tov, Yom Tov goes 7 days, you could do it, or beginning of Pesach, beginning of Sukkot. You don't have to do a mariko shtifa till the end of Sukkot, or the end of Pesach. If you did a shlamim at the beginning of, let's say, on the first day of Sukkot, so you can eat the shlamim on the first day and that night and then the next day. At the end of the second day, you have to, after the zman achila is over, then mariko shtifa. You have to mariko shtifa immediately. Marika is kamarika sakais, or shtifa katifa sakais. The marika refers, this is what we said before. So marika is kamarika sakais, zakrashi, kamarika sakais, b'vifnim kakais shel bracha, right? You know you're supposed to wash out the kais before benching, right? You rinse it out. This is the marika sakais that we do. So when we say marika, it's talking to that rinsing in the inside, and marika is, and shtifa is kashtifa sakais. That's talking about on the outside that you wash it out afterwards. So this is going to be, like we said, this is going to be Rebbe who says that it's this is, well, we'll see who this is like. Mishnah, the Gemara is going to say. Mariko Shtifa B'tzaina. And Marika and Shtifa are both with cold water. So this is Rebbe. This is what we mentioned before. This is the Shita, that they're both with cold water. And the Mariko Shtifa refers to inside and outside. Hashvud v'askala magilim b'cham. The spit that they would put, the different, or the grates that they would use to cook meat on it, you would do hagala on them with hot water. And the chiddush of this is, according to everyone, even according to Rebbe, that Mariko Shtifa referred to cold water, you do have to do a hagala beforehand. And the chiddush of this is that even though you're roasting on these, you don't require. That's what the Mefarshim explain. That it only needs with hot water. It doesn't need to be burnt out like we would normally do with tarfus. And Rashi says, why doesn't it need taka that it should be burnt out? Why are we saying? Well, what's the reason for this chiddush? Zok the Gemara. My time of the Reb Tarfon. What's the reason of Reb Tarfon? He said that on Yom Tov, you don't need a Mariko Shtifa every day, or at the end when things become mutal achila, or come asab achila, I'm sorry. You do it at the end of Yom Tov. He says, it says at the end of the day, and it comes to the morning, and you'll go back to your house. It says you're going to come to the Beis HaMikdash, in the morning you're going to leave. But the Yom Tov is 7 days, so it's making the whole 7 days. The next morning is like, we're calling it biker 7 days later. It's coming to tell you that the whole Yom Tov is looked at as 1 day. He said, the boy asked him, if you're saying it's all treated as 1 day, so how do you have pigel that he has a machshavas chutz lizmane, that if he brought a carbon on the first day and he has a mind to eat it on the third day, that would be that it's not going to be pigel, or nicer that if he just leaves over the basar past the time. Are you saying that it's all treated as 1 day for all dinim? We never heard of such a thing. This Reb Tarfon said that it's treated as 1 day, that you can make one Mariko Shtifa at the end of Yom Tov. That's only for this din. It's not for anything else. So how can you say Babaika makes it all into 1 day? So Gemara rejects that. Pshat elikav Nachman amar Bavua, Dam Nachman amar Bavua, Kol Yom v'Yom Nase Gil l'Chaveri. What it means is that on Yom Tov there was a lot of karbanis brought, and they were constantly cooking things in the pots. So every day it would have, when you would cook it on the second day, that would clean out whatever tam there was from the previous day. So that, and it's not, obviously you're going to ask, but why doesn't that tam that comes out? Why doesn't then they just go back in? But that we're not choishish for. We're not going to. So Rashi, let's see the Rashi. Nasa gil chaver mitech shashlam mitzuyim beregel. Ein bilulashan nasa noiser. It doesn't become leftover. So he's man sham lebeis yamim, because you have 2 days to each shlam. V'chim avashal beis shlamim ha'idna. Hadam avashal beis shlamim l'macha. The next is going to be more shlam. Or beileim beis shlamim shenishkutu b'yom ha'machras. It will absorb from the new shlamim that were brought in that day. Pilot mashabala esmal, and will expel what was in it from the previous day. Beileim and achroinim, and it will absorb from the later ones. But it's a chaz of you have to be careful that by a chatas you have to do a shlamim that day, because you don't have the next day for a chatas. Chatas is only 1 day. I thought it was explaining this. Okay. The Chum disagreed. They said you just wait till the Zman Achila, and then then that's when you have to do Mariko Shtika. You don't wait till the end of Yom Tov. Maika Amar, Nachman Amar Avavua, Mamtam Lad Zman Achila, Hava Avad La Mariko Shtika. It means that they wait until the time of Achila, and then they immediately have to do Mariko Shtika. They don't wait till the end of Yom Tov. Minani Mili, Amar Rav Yochanan Mishum Abba Yosi Ben Abba Ksiv Umarik B'Shatav Ksiv Kol Zacha B'Kahanim Yachal. It says the din of Mariko Shtifa, and it says the Kahanim will eat it. Okay, it said, that's where we learn the basic din that Mariko Shtifa is done when the end of the Zman Achila is. Marika Sakais, Shtifa Kashtifa Sakais. So this is that confusing din that we said b'shem Rabbi. We're going to see it now. That Marika and Shtifa, Marika is on the inside and Shtifa is on the outside. And we said both of them are with cold water. So turn around. Marika Shtifa b'tzainin, divrei Rabbi. This is Rabbi and this is our Mishnah. Marika b'chamen u'shtifa b'tzainin. Marika is with hot water and Shtifa is b'tzainin. Now, as we said before, the Mefarshim are very clear that Rebbe does not reject the idea that you have to clean it out first with hot water. He's saying you first have to do a hagala with hot water to remove the noiser in the kli, and then the Torah was made a gzeira that you also have to do with cold water. Whereas according to the Chachamim, the original hagala was also part of the takanas chacha, part of the gzeres hakasav that you do with basar that was cooked in the Beis Hamikdash. My daima de Rabbanan. What's the reason of the Rabbanan that they say that the Marika is b'chamin? Of the Chachamim. He said they say it comes just like the din. Right? Where do we get the din of hagala that you can remove a flavor, a isser from a kli? That comes from Gilui of the Chachamim, from when you boil out. We said in the midbar after they captured the kalim, the Torah says you have to burn them out. Rabbi Amalach Hagala like Kamina. The Torah is not talking about Hagala. Kamina lemikoshi for the basar Hagala. The Gemara is saying this. The Gemara says I'm talking about the Mariko Shtiva that comes after Hagala. But I'm not saying that there's no Hagala. I don't think that when the Torah said Mariko Shtiva, it's required anywhere. The abundance you should use you change the laws if they're both you should use the same lashon. People would just say the same lashon. Have I think that they're both going to be the same? Let's see the Mishnah. Bishul by kachim b'chulin, I kachem kalim. If he cooked kachem together with chulin, or kachem together with kachem kalim, im yesh b'hem enoisim tam. If the kachem gave a tam into the chulin, or the kachem gave a tam into the kachem kalim, harei kalim nechalim kachamurim shaben. Then in spite of the fact that you have, let's say, 50 times as much chulin as you have kachem, you're not going to, let's say it was kachem kalim, you're going to have the restrictions of the kachem. And if it's kachem and kachem kalim, you're going to have the restrictions of the kachem. And they're not going to need Riko Shtifa, and they're not going to, if then what this touched, let's say the kachem kalim got the din of kachem, if it went and touched something else, that touching is not going to make the thing that it touches also to be, to also have the same din. We're going to see in a minute, this is a very obscure lashon over here, and the Gemara is going to say chsur mechsur. We're going to have to change the lashon. If you have a hot loaf or wafer that touched another one, or a piece of meat that touched another meat, it's only going to answer the place that it touched. If there are things over here, we're not talking about cooking in liquid. if two hot, solid, dry things touch each other, they only answer the place that they only absorb in the place where they touched. So the Gemara first explains the first lashon that we had just said about. My comment. If it's a nice and tam, then it should be get the din of the Muhammadic one. And it should need Mariko Shtifa, or place of a maga, and it should passel what it touches. So Gemara, we're saying it's saying something different. This is really the answer. When the Mishnah said im yesh behem b'nois and tam, then it's going to have the din that both the kalin is nachal and chamurim, and it does need Mariko Shtifa, or place of a maga. So that's the second and the third thing that it said in the Mishnah are really part of a second din. But where it's if ein b'hem b'nois and tam, if it's not nois and tam, ein nakal nachal chamurim, ein tu Mariko Shtifa, ein place of a maga. It's really, you're dividing up the Mishnah into two parts. It says bishul kachem b'chulin or kachem kachem. Okay, we'll have to. I guess we'll have to see this again tomorrow. It's getting really late. Okay.